ShaLaWam family. This is yet again your boy, your Jonathan Hebrew Prince, and I'm coming to you on this beautiful day, giving out some information that the Most High has put up on my heart, and I hope that it brings edification to you. But we can't start anything without letting the Most High know that we are appreciative. For this is the day that Yahweh has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. For his love, his peace, his patience, and his kindness endures to all generations. Hallel Yahweh, Hallel Yahweh, Hallel Yahweh. Family, who are you? Check it out. Let's look on this screen. We're going to start off like this. We're going to start out like this here, family. As we can see, we have this melanated individual sitting up here right under the sign called America, right under the banner. And take a look at this. What do we have here? Look at you. Look at us. You know, a lot of times I hear the Hebrew Israelites talks a lot about fringes. But look at what we wore. Look at what really our fringes were. Look at these right here. Look at these feathers. Look at our heads. Look at our borders. Look how the borders look. This is what we are, family. The native individuals, the indigenous aboriginals of this land that we called America. This is what they found when they came here, family. Right here. This is what they found. Let's look at a couple of more relics. Got some good stuff here. Let's take a look at this. Look at you. Look at the elder. See if we can zoom in on that a little bit. Look at that. Right out to chapter 3. And I'll show you what the title of the book is. America. Accurate description of the new world. New to who? It's not new to you. But it was new to the European who came here and found this place. From their perspective, the new world. But this is the old world. It was already here. Something would not be new to an inhabitant or an indigenous or an aboriginal of the land. There's nothing new about it. This is what always has been and what they always know. But to someone who is never known, then of course this will be new. A newfound land. Right? This is the title of this book right here. I like the fact that this particular website just puts everything together. And these are all the pictures inside. Now, just for those of you who doubt, we can't make this mistake right here. Can't make a mistake here. We see that is definitely non-melanation right there. Right? Versus, let's look at another picture. So we see that there's not an issue with the colors. Okay? Look at you here. Look at you in the background here. Look at this. This is the civilization, family. This is how we were living before this current system was present. This is how we was living. And as you can see, we was living rather civilized, as what is called today civilized. We were not savages. We are the indigenous people of this place. Understand that. Let's keep going. Let's see if we can find another good one. Let's go with this one. Look at that. Look at us. Let's do another one. Let's look at this one. Really like this one. Look how we wore we girded our loins. In accordance with scripture, we had our borders, fringes. This is how we operated. Look at us all down here. This is you, family. This is you. Look at the date. 1671. Right here. Okay? Why is this important, family? because the topic that I would like to discuss is racism. Right now, I will definitely bring a series. It's been put on my heart. And I know there's a couple of series that I've kind of paused on. One being, it's time to get out of Christianity. I'm still not finished with that one. I just took a pause on it for a little bit. This one right here is time to exit Christianity for truth. We've done 3 parts, and we will definitely move on and knock out as many parts as need be to stamp it out. However, before we get into that even a little bit further, I wanted to address racism, and I wanted to address the origin of race. I wanted to address these things, nations, tribes, these words that we find so much meaning to, but we don't know what those meanings are. And when we speak and when we say things that we are this or we are that, and we classify ourselves, the implications of that. How can you classify yourself and you don't even know what the true meaning of that classification really is? Furthermore, when we look into racism itself and we look into what has happened to our people, the so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro, when we become what we call today is conscious and aware, we have a tendency to harbor some anger towards what I like to call the non-melanated man, or what some call the so-called white man. We like to harbor a little bit of anger towards that, and that's fully understandable when you look at it from the surface, but you have to look beyond that. How is it that this system has truly been able to thrive? Really, like truly, how has it been able to thrive? How is it that we have went from being the indigenous people, right, with good, with wonderful, strong civilizations? How is it that we went from this, right, to going to a situation where we are in subjugation? How do we do that? How do we become slaves? How did that really happen? So we have to investigate that, family. We really have to put an eye on that. Because I will tell you this, we can constantly look at it from a black and white perspective, or we can look at it from a true perspective substantiated by fact. What do I mean by that? You have to realize, and it took me some time, and it took some pain and experience. It took some time, pain, and experience to realize nothing can happen to the so-called black, the so-called African American, and the so-called Negro without infiltration within the camp. I will say that again. Nothing can happen to the so-called black, the so-called African American, and the so-called Negro without infiltration within the camp. See, we have to comprehend one thing. I'm gonna show you this video. Gonna start at minute 16, and then we're probably gonna go to about minute 21 or 22 in the video. And I want you to listen closely. And I will give you, I'm not gonna commentate at all. We'll talk about it after the full 4 or 5 minutes is over. But comprehend what I'm telling you. Without infiltration within the camp, from within, then the so-called white man, the so-called non-melanated man, the so-called modern European could not have accomplished what has been accomplished in this nation or the world. It had to be within the camp. There had to be infiltration. And what I mean by infiltration, I mean betrayal. That's what I'm talking about. Betrayal within the... So the reason why that's important, family, is because you have to be able to put your anger where it lies, and it has to be put in the proper perspective. Nobody's telling you don't be angry about where we are. Nobody's telling you not to be upset about our condition. For those of you who are conscious and really looking into what's going on and trying to find a solution to the problem. But you cannot, I repeat, cannot come at it from a perspective of black versus white. That's not going to work. It has not worked. It will not work. It has to come from a perspective of righteous versus unrighteous. Those that were true versus those that love the lies. those that was about being for the Most High and those that were not. Those that really had love in their heart, not for themselves, but for others around them, and understood how important it was to make proper decisions because it would affect those around them. And then you had the other ones that didn't care, that all they wanted to do was fill their own pockets. You have to know this, family, because if we keep looking at this thing from a black or white perspective, I'm telling you, we're not going to make any progress, not only as a so-called black African American Negro people, but also as people in general. We will not make any progress because we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. It has to be a righteous versus unrighteous, rather a race thing. Because when we do this series, you will find out race has not been here that long. So now you have to go into who created race. How did we become classified as race? How is it that we only got a few races when we filling out these little bubbling sheets to classify ourselves? Why did this system come into play? Who helped the system to put it in play? Was it only the so-called white man, or did we have some help from within the camp? Or was it from within the camp that actually initiated it? Let's look into this. So I want you to listen to this vid. I'm not telling you anything just to make it like I'm smart. I'm trying to learn as well, but I have to go where the evidence lie. Where the evidence is, that's where we rolling. So without further ado, please take a listen to this.
The Confederate flag, you understand? You have people in the Nation of Islam that would equate the American flag, the same oppressive posture as the Confederate flag in this country. Give us your take on why y'all proudly display the American flag.
All right, peace. Well, we got to understand, during the Civil War with the Confederate States, you have 480,000 free blacks in the Confederate States that owned slaves. And that fought on the side of the Confederacy to keep slavery going because they don't want to lose their property. And what happened is that you had a brother named Anthony Johnson, who was the first recorded slaveholder who was a Moor, or a so-called black man in America. The word slave comes from, the Slavics. And the first slaves that come to America was Europeans. They came to colonize the Americas from Britain because it was cheap labor. Way before the transatlantic slave trade took place, you had so-called Native Americans that fought on the side of Confederacy because in 1866 they didn't want to give up their slaves, so they was on the far side of Confederacy. So this concept that we have, that was like all these Europeans that was on the side of Confederacy fighting to keep slavery going. There were many indigenous original people on the side of Confederacy, so-called blacks as well as Native Americans, fighting to keep slavery going on. And the reason we wear the American banner, because we gotta understand that we had a confederacy called the Iroquois Confederation, which was so-called blacks, Moors, and that we united with the Europeans to form a union. It was 35 more than 20 Europeans, and we formed a union. And the white stripes represent, the stripes represent the 6 European tribes that came here, and the red represent that we was the minority to form the union we call United States of America, because the Constitution was adopted from the Great Law of Peace.
So are you saying that the Moors fought on the side of the South to keep slavery going?
It was Moors that fought on the North as well as the South. It was Moors that fought on the South and the North that fought. Some fought against slavery, some fought for slavery.
So you're saying that the Moors in this country were not united?
No, we was not united. It was just like today we're not united. Some Moors wanted to fight and keep slavery going, some Moors didn't want to keep slavery going. So when you read about the American Revolution, it says it was brother fighting against brother. That's talking about the Moors fighting against each other. And Abraham...
Brutish Moors?
Yeah.
That's what the British Moors.
Exactly, because you had a people called the Ethiopian regiment who fought on the side of the British, who were free during the time of the American Revolution. There's a book called They Were White, They Were Slaves, going to that history, that they were so-called blacks Moors who fought on the side of Britain during that time. And you gotta understand too, when the Europeans came and emancipated from Britain, Britain was with treaties with the Moors. The Britain was paying a tax to the Moors. So when they was freeing independence from Britain, they was freeing from the Moors. and they came over here, and some of our Moors didn't agree to form a union with them. It was 35 of the 20 European sons that formed a union. It was supposed to have been 50 of them. There's a book called Indian Givers that go into that. The rest of the Moors didn't agree to form the union, and the 35 Moors agreed and formed the union. That's when we started having these different tribal wars amongst each other. The Moors, we never was defeated by the European. We defeated ourselves because we had disagreements with one another. But and when we adopted the term black, Negro, and colored, it just put us under a servitude situation.
See now that sounds a little troubling to me, and maybe you could help clarify what you're saying to me. Is that the Moors formed a union with the European when the European came to this country in their fight against Great Britain for independence, and they fought on the side of the European that wanted to keep the institution of slavery intact.
Yeah, but you only looking at this for one. But okay. Another part where Moors fought on the north to keep slavery, to end slavery.
Yeah, but see,
what I'm saying, what I mean I mean black people.
I understand that, but let's deal with the timeline. Okay, the timeline says that when slavery was instituted in this country, there was Moors in this country that were in cahoots with the European and did nothing about it. Did nothing about the institution of slavery. The ones who eventually fought against it. They sat back and let that institution...
It was about money. That's what it was about.
Okay.
Family, if you was listening to that last part, he ended it by saying it was about money. It was about money. What the scripture says about money, or the love of it. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Now, what you have here is you have these brothers that are having a good dialogue about the institution of slavery in these United States of America, on this land. These brothers that you're looking at on the screen are called Moors. You can go do your research on the Moors. I'll leave that up to you. But comprehend that these brothers right here are claiming to be Moors. And up here they have the feds. That's what this hat is called. It's called the feds. They have on their uniform, right? Have they Muslim or Islam, if you will, situation going on the medallion, and they have on their collar, at least he has his, they have theirs too, but you can't see it. But on his over here, on his left hand shoulder, and over here as well, that's his right. So his left hand over here, they have the American flag. Now, just a quick, simple breakdown on what they subscribe to. They talk about this being the actual land of Morocco, and that they are the descendants or the true inhabitants or the aboriginals of this land. Okay? And we're going to get into that. What this conversation is about between this gentleman right here and the Moors is that who truly allowed or helped or instituted slavery into this country amongst the so-called Negroes. You had different slaveries that was going on prior to slavery here in this country. Even if you go read the Tanakh, it talks about servitude, talks about slavery, how to treat your slave, things like that, even in the Old Testament. If you also deal with the African culture, you go into the Africans as well, you can find out that there were slaves going on between tribes and things like that. But there was never a time where it was chattel slavery. Chattel slavery, which if you watch this, and I hope you do, once again, let me go ahead and throw out there, this is fair use. This is not my video. I'm not making no money off of this. This is the houseofconsciousness.com. You see this at the bottom. Sign at a TV. This is all their work. Nothing to do as far as me is concerned and being in production with that. So I want to throw that out there. But I'm using this as fair use for education and for scholarship and questioning things like that. But what you have to look at is that this brother and the Moors are having a conversation talking about chattel slavery. Chattel slavery is the worst kind of slavery. And this video will describe that for the hour, 21 minutes and 29 seconds. Will tell you, why this conversation is so pertinent about chattel slavery. That's when you are a slave to the end, and even during your slave time, you are stripped of being a human being, period. You are stripped of being who you are as a human being. You have nothing. Whereas in other slaveries that was between tribes, the tribes was in servitude to the winning kingdom or the conquering kingdom, but they still was allowed to keep their traditions, still allowed to keep their names or whatever have you. That wasn't the slavery here in the United States of America. It was the most brutal slavery of all humanity in all time. And I make that statement boldly, especially amongst the so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro. Now, let's do a recap of the video. This brother is asking them, help me to comprehend what the Moors' involvement were regarding chattel slavery of the so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro. Long story short, this brother got a problem with what they're talking about, how they made a confederacy and how they made covenants or whatever with the modern day European, the so-called white man, the so-called non-melanated individual, how they made treaties and how they made covenants and confederates with the so-called white man to come here and conquer the land, period, and make money at the expense of the so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro. And it just so happened that when you look at these brothers, my question to you is, what is their skin complexion? What is their skin complexion? And if you do your research on Moors, if you do your proper research on Moors, you'll find out that the Moors are melanated people. Some like to say melanated, some like to say black, some like to say brown skinned, some like to say carbonated. This is what I'm gonna tell you, dark complexion. They was not the so-called white folks. Comprehend that. Let that marinate for a quick second. Now this brother said, going back to what this brother was saying, you see, they had a problem with the timeline. Because the timeline, when you look at the history of the Moors in this country, in their confederacy and what they did with the Europeans, they're telling you this, they're telling you themselves that they was there and they stood aside. They stood aside. He specifically asked that question. So basically, y'all just stood aside, watched the system of slavery come into the so-called black African American Negro, and you later on decided to say, oh, I'm gonna fight against it. But you was there when it was being established and capitalizing off of it. And what did the Moors say? Specifically, this brother right here. This brother right here, what did he say? It was about money. It was about money. Now, I will guarantee you, you go check out the public school history books and even your private school history books, they're not going to tell you that it was an economic vendetta. They're going to try to put it black versus white type of situation, just like the media does today, just like propaganda on the media does today, in the newspaper, the magazines, these garbage history books. They're going to tell you the black versus white type of situation. It's not until you get in scholarly articles, until you do some digging, that you find out it was an economic stance and that actually it was our own people that sold us out. Now, I say that loosely because they're melanated, carbonated, or dark-skinned like us. But the question you have to ask yourself, are they our people? Well, let's look at that. Let's look at that for a minute. So what did I do? I wanted to learn more about the Moors. Who are the Moors? Because we know, as a so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro, we know, being the descendants of Jacob, that this is our land. Not over there, over here. Remember the pictures I showed you? We were here. Martin Luther King told you that. Malcolm X told you that. Frederick Douglass told you that. We were here. This is the land of our nativity, the land of our heritage, the land of our indigenesis. Here. You saw how we looked, what the banner of America was, and saw how we looked on it. And I would be happy to show you more pictures in the future. But comprehend and do your own research. We were here. This was our land. This is our place. This is our heritage. This is the promised land of our fathers that the Most High gave us. But these individuals, these brothers also are saying the same thing, and they are Moors. So you have to find out, is the Moor really the so-called African American black Negro? Are they a subsect or a part of? Or who are the Moors? Of what descendants are the Moors? Because you got to remember, Abraham had more than one wife. So who are the Moors? Do they come from Abraham? Are they the Ishmaelites that come from Hagar and Abraham? Are they the sons of Keturah when Abraham was old and he had a wife after Sarah? Well, we know they don't come from Sarah because Sarah dealing with Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. So we're dealing with that situation. But they're not claiming that. They claiming something else, obviously. Or are they? Let's go into it and see. So I went on to the page. It says the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Got the good 7. Got the Prophet Drew Ali in the back. Dedicated to chapter 47. So let's go. Let's look into this. And what is the first thing you see on the page? You see Federation, MSTA. Welcome. Welcome what? The Moabites. Stop. Pause. Hammer time. We got to hammer in these Moabites. They're talking about Moabites. The Moabites and the dominions of Amexem in America by this person. Sheikh Robert Stone L. GGDM. Prophet Noble Drew Ali revealed the history of the Moabites and their brethren in the Western Hemisphere in the land referred to as the Americas. What is now known as the Americas is part and partially of the dominion of Amexem. Okay, before we go any further, let's look at who the Moabites were according to the Tanakh. Genesis chapter 19 verse 37 states, and the firstborn bare his son, and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites unto this day. Well, what happened? Let's go back up a little bit. See if y'all remember this story. Do you remember what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? Sodom and Gomorrah, go check this out, 18 and 19 chapter, I believe it is in Genesis. You have a situation where you have the messengers of the Most High come visit the city. Lot sees these individuals, brings them into his home. Then the men of Sodom and Gomorrah was trying to beat down Lot's door to get to the men because they wanted to lay with them. Lot sent out his daughters like, hey, take them, but don't do these men no harm, because you don't know who these men are. You might not want to do that to these brothers or to these messengers, these individuals. They're like, we don't want your daughter. We want the men up in there. And then they started to go after Lot. The Malaks blind the men that was trying to impress themselves upon Lot, put Lot back in the house. Told Lot, you need to grab all your stuff and your family, beat feet, because we finna destroy this place because of the sin in it. Told him, don't look back. Look back, you're gonna suffer some horrible consequences. What happened? Well, wife looked back. Well, let's back up. They went out, they started moving. They got up out that city. Them doggone messengers went straight shim on them. Blew that city up. Tore it up. Wife looked back. Boom. Pillar of salt. Finished. Finito. Gone. Done. Keep going. Better not look back. So they finally get back, and then that's where we take off. It says, let's go right here to Genesis chapter 19, verse 30. It says, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, our father is old. Listen, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. This is the effect of sin. Listen to it. Listen to their mindset. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night. And the firstborn went in and lay with her father. And he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also. And go thou in and lie with him, that he may preserve his seed, seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also. The younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. And the firstborn bare a son, firstborn daughter, right? The firstborn bare a son and called his name Moab. The name is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son and called his name Ben-Naman. Sorry. The same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. So you have the Moabites and the Ammonites. That's what you have here. And look at that story. According to the Moorish page, they're talking about Moab. Let's look at it. The Moabites. Okay? And telling you that that's here. Then let's go into a little bit more, because they have some more history on their page. Okay? Dodge your hijack. Check your sources. Okay? Oh, before I do that, though, let's go to Deuteronomy. This is how the Most High felt about the Moabites and the Ammonites, right? It says in 23:3 of Deuteronomy, an Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter into the congregation of Hawa, even to their 10th generation. Shall they not enter into the congregation of Hawa forever, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way, when ye came forth out of Mitzrayim or Egypt, and because they hired against thee Balaam the son of Beor of Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse thee. Nevertheless, Hawa thy Elohim would not hearken unto Balaam, but Hawa thy Elohim turned the curse into a blessing unto thee, because Hawa thy Elohim loved thee. Thou shalt not seek their peace, nor their prosperity. Listen to what he's saying. You don't fool up with them. You don't fool up forever. That's what he's saying about the Moabites and the Ammonites. Don't fool up with them. Okay? And he tells you why. So they wasn't even kind to us then. What makes you think they're going to be kind to us now? What makes you think that they're on our side now and they wasn't even on our side from ancient of days during the time of Moshe? Joshua had to deal with them after Moshe died. Joshua had to deal with the same folk. Same thing with David. We've been dealing with these Moabites for quite some time, and then we bring you up to now. Because remember, I'm not saying they're Moabites. I thought they was Ishmael. But they say, according to their own page, they say Moabites. That's what they say. So I can only go by their doctrine. If it's a lie, they told it. Not yours truly. Now, you watch this video, and this brother broke it down. Or should I say, this individual broke that thing down and told you what? He told you it was about money. He's telling you they stood aside and watched the system come into play. What does that mean? That means they could have stopped it. So it was already here. They was watching they was making confederacy with the so-called white man to assist the so-called white man in putting the so-called black, the so-called African American, the so-called Negro into chattel, perpetual slavery and servitude. Not the so-called white man. He didn't do it by himself, family. Don't let the media get you distracted. Don't let these articles get you distracted. Don't get so emotional that you miss it. You got to ask yourself the question. All these ghettos around here, all these hoods around here, but all this money that we have. There's an article that just came out that says we have the buying power of $1.2 trillion. And we have some rich, we have some wealthy, very wealthy so-called Negroes in this country. Explain to me why there's so many ghettos and hoods. Why our children can't get scholarships? We can't. Are we just gonna blame that on the system? Who helping the system? Because these brothers telling you they was right there. In other words, they could have stopped the entire situation, but they saw the dollar, they saw the gold, they saw the silver, they saw the precious stones, they saw their own benefit. So the question is, are they your brothers? Not if they Moabites. Because when you go to this scripture, Most High has become specific. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite. Who is Edom? Edom is Esau. That's your brother. He says, for he is thy brother. He is your brother. So don't abhor. What does abhor mean? Don't hate him. Don't hate the Edomites. That's out this Tanakh. Don't hate them. They are your brother. And for newsflash, Edomites is not the so-called white man. Because if an Edomite is a so-called white man, that makes him a Hebrew. Then you got a whole nother situation. So-called white man is not a Hebrew. He's not a doggone Edomite. Let's throw that out the water. And if you don't believe me, go look it up yourself. Get out the camp doctrine and pay attention to your own words and read your own stuff. Leave the camps alone. Know who's who in the zoo. And if you don't, ask the Most High. He'll give it to you. He'll put you in the right source. He ain't the so-called white man. So Esau is our twin brother. Don't hate him. And he makes it specific about Edom being our brother. And why not to hate the Egyptian or the Mitzrayim? Because that was a stranger in his land, and we was there for quite some time. Whereas one of our brothers, Joseph, was the second in command there. We was actually doing pretty good amongst the Mitzrayim until the situation broke down later on under unrighteous Pharaoh, who knew not Joseph. So when we're talking about what really happened here in this country, and we're really talking about racism, racism is a man-made concept. Race don't even really exist, just like money. It's something to keep our minds spent up and off focus. To focus on something foolish, white versus black. We're going to focus on a white cop killing a black man. But we're not going to focus on the interaction of crime that we have every day. Oh, it's all good because it's in our own neighborhood. No, it's not. That's a dead body. That's somebody's life. That's a soul. No matter who kill him, that's bad. Gotta alleviate that. Gotta stop that. But the media, the newspapers, the magazines, the movies try to shift everything as if it's a black and white situation, not comprehending what this brother here said out of his own mouth. It was about money. And when you really break this thing down from an economic standpoint, that's what it was about. Especially when you find out that the first slave owner was a black person, so-called black. When you find out that we had situations within us that, hey, we was owning each other. We own each other. Some of us got free out of bondage and got slaves and owned them. But then you had these brothers that wasn't slaves when they got here at all. They was in what he said, confederate with the European to put a system in place. And then when someone was like, oh wait, maybe we messed up. A lot of them was like, nah, we making this money. We gonna fight against you. And they are supposed to be melanated brothers. He telling you they fought against the situation. He is very careful though to tell you the number. But when you go back into our history, you go back into Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, he's telling you, the nation, the Moabite nation, tried to get us cursed by Balaam. It's right there. You try to get us cursed. But the Most High turned the curse into a blessing or showed favor upon us. Am I saying that those of European descent, or should I say the European that still enjoys this system and still perpetuate the foolishness against us, that they're right? Of course not. What I'm telling you is don't lose focus on the entire situation. That's only one side of the story. What about our own, so-called our own, that helped the so-called European put us in bondage? Flip it. And what about some of the Europeans that helped out Harriet Tubman with the Underground Railroad, that said, nah, we not about that. We not owning no slaves. We love people, period. Whether you are Negro or whatever you are, we still love you, and we're not going to do what our fathers did. We going to help free these slaves. What about those individuals? Again, it's not black versus white. It's righteous versus unrighteous, right versus wrong, truth versus lies. That's what it's about, family. That's what it's about. Don't lose focus of that. Let's go back to the Moors page. The history of a Mexium goes back to the Hamites and Cushites. According to Noble Drew Ali, a Mexium is the ancient name for Africa. In the ancient times, a Mexium included what is known today as the continent of Africa and North, Central, and South America and the islands of the Caribbean. That's from their perspective. That's from this guy's, the Moors' perspective. Okay? The other inhabitants of this region, Africa and Americas, were Hamites, Cushites, and Canaanites. Prophet Drew Ali states the inhabitants of Africa are descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. What land did we go conquer, family? Please, Dr. Hijack, though. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of a Mexican. The first true and divine name of Africa, the dividing of the land between the Father and the Son. Now look at this map. What they're saying is that when it comes to North, South, Central, and all the rest of this land, Atlantis included, what does it say? Moroccan Empire. So they're claiming indigenousness. Not only they claim indigenous to the world for the most part, outside of Asia. Okay, in Europe. These same individuals went into Europe. And when you do the history of the Moors, the so-called white man, or the modern day European, the non-melanated individual, did not know anything about cleanliness. They didn't know anything about, how to build their kingdoms. There was, according to history, it was living with that, they just had a hard time with cleanliness and, how to construct their kingdoms and, all kind of different arrangements, electricity, sanitation, not eating with your hands, all that kind of stuff is what was going on during that time. The Moors, these brothers, so-called, went into Europe and taught them all of that, according to the history, from what I've seen. Taught them how to clean themselves, taught them how to build their kingdoms, took the animals, put them outside, taught them how to orchestrate, militaries and all kind of stuff, electricity, how to eat with utensils, all kind of things were these Moors brought to. They brought navigation, how to go around the seas, i.e. Moor in the ship, Moorish, black or Moor. Help them get over to this place. What they don't tell you is that Christopher Columbus had a Moor navigating. He needed the Moor to navigate over here in the first place. What am I telling you, family? Be careful on where you directing your anger and what you believing on the media, because they will have you believing black versus white when in all actuality it's right versus wrong, and you can't put a color on that. You cannot put a color on it. I can show you instances right now in scripture where we sold each other out. Tribes went rogue. Brothers went rogue. Visit your scriptures in 1 Maccabees and see what happened when the individuals from not even the Moors, within our own Hebrew nation, went to the king, the Grecian, and said, hey, we'll help you bring your commandments into our land, just pretty much make us great. To fight against Jonathan and Judas and Mattathias Maccabeus, our forefathers, who were trying to uphold the precepts, statutes, laws, and commands of the Most High, to where Mattathias and Judas had to kill our own brothers because they were trying to sell us out to the king of the Greeks. So be careful when you direct your racism, family. Let's do a little bit more about the Moors and we're going to shut this down. Chemosh, the ancient god of the Moabites. Chemosh was a national deity of the Moabites, whose name most likely meant destroyer, subduer, or fish god. If that's their god, and their god name means destroyer, which happened to us. Subduer, we got subdued by the Moors. I could be wrong. I want to say it was King Leopold. That the Moors was helping to destroy the indigenous people there to get the product that he needed to make him rich. Let's keep going. While he is most readily associated with the Moabites, according to Judges 11:24, he seems to have been the national deity of the Ammonites as well. But that doesn't bring us a surprise when they're family. They had the same father, which was Lot. Makes them brothers. His presence in the Old Testament world was well known, and his cult was imported to Jerusalem by King Solomon. That's where we made our mistake. That's where Solomon made his mistake. He bringing this ratchet, garbage, horrible deity into our nation. Why? Because he started fooling over the women outside of the Hebrew women that he's supposed to be dealing with. The Hebrew scorn for his worship was evident in a curse from the scriptures. The abomination of Moab. King Josiah destroyed the Israelite branch of the cult, which is in 2 Kings chapter 23. And I'll put this article, let you check out this link, and also deal with this a little bit more. But what I'm trying to give you is one thing, family, as an introduction. Be careful. Be very, very careful when we're talking about racism, because it's a new concept. It's a very new concept. Very new concept, family. When we talk about race, when we talk about common descent, we're talking about 16th century. We're talking about 16th century, family. This is the etymology of the word race. So you have to ask yourself the question, what were we classified as prior to race in the 16th century? What were we? Because if we wasn't classified by this until the 1500s, 16th century, then what were we prior to that? And how did we conduct ourselves? Because we still was having situations before that. And we still was having problems within the camp before that as well. This is not to give any group of people a pass. This is to tell everyone who wishes to choose the Most High, and everyone that wishes to do righteousness, everyone that wishes to see the system get better, no matter who you are or what your ethnicity is. If you choosing the Most High, choosing to be used as a vessel to make things better, that's the most important aspect. If you're choosing that, then you're on the right side of the fence. Because if you look at history, you find out that we had slave owners that looked like the so-called Negro, was the so-called Negro. And those that also look like us is from other tribes. The Ammonites, the Moabites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, Jebusites, Hivites. They was tribal, not racist. Tribal. Because the same situation, if you look at it, maybe not, haven't done as much research, and I'm going to speak on it very cautiously. But even when you look at the so-called white man's tribes prior to classification as race, they had a lot of wars amongst themselves as well. So how are we interacting within our own groups and amongst each other when we cross that, when we cross the tribal barrier amongst different complexions? How do we handle that? That's something we need to research and get to the true bottom of it. And I guarantee you it's going to go back to right versus wrong. It's not going to go back to racism. Racism is a new concept that's been exploited today to keep everyone blind and separated so we can't come together and make the system better. So we can't come together and worship the Most High. Scripture says He's not going to bring all races together. He's going to bring all nations together. The Most High look at us as nations. What nation are you a part of? And is your nation a nation that's willing to choose up? So I love you, family. That's all I got for you. May the Most High keep you. May the Most High show favor upon you. Much Ahab. ShaLaWam.